Welcome back, F-Bombers, to another episode. Today is a particularly special episode for me because it's near and dear to my heart. It's something I have, worked with, since I was like mid-20s. And I have two special guests with me today, Dr. Jessica Petrusma and Dr. Tracy Lynn Reside. And we're going to be here talking to you about nutrition, natural kind of approaches to care, self-care, and some other topics I think that will be really exciting. So welcome.
Thank you.
So why don't you introduce yourselves first, and then we'll get going. Do you want to?
Yeah. So it's great to be here. Thanks. It's nice to see you again. My name is Tracy Lynn. I have been practicing 2026 will be year 14 as a naturopathic doctor, as a second career for me. And I was in full-time practice doing mostly women's health and children. Just before COVID, we moved to the North Bay area. And so I took a bit of a break and did my master's in, I've always done a bit of research. That was my previous career. I did my master's at Nipissing University here. And so now I kind of do a little bit of everything. I am a consultant, so I run my own business and I do research and education consulting primarily in healthcare, and specifically with naturopathic medicine across the country. And I see patients usually one day a week, sometimes a little more. So, yeah.
Thanks. Jess?
I'm Jessica Petrusma. So I'm a naturopath in North Bay, but also practice virtually too. I've been in practice now for almost 9 years, and I spent 7 of those in Niagara. So on Mondays, I still run a virtual practice, and then 4 days a week, I'm here 9 to 5. So it's built really quickly in the north, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, it's actually everybody I seem to talk to these days talks about, I went to see my naturopathic doctor. I'm like, wow, this is really like big now. So this is good. So, okay, explain to me what naturopathic medicine is.
Sure. Yeah. So I usually start by explaining the education behind naturopathic medicine because a lot of people think that it's like a 2-year college program. And we have to do 4 years of an undergrad. There's science prerequisites there. And then we have to do 4 years at one of 2 colleges. So one in Ontario and then one out in BC called Boucher. So the one both of us attended is the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine in Toronto. Mm-hmm. So after that 8 years, then we can practice. And you can write a prescribing exam on top of that, which is another test and all of that. But naturopathic medicine to me is I am quite evidence-based. So it is trying to use natural preventative principles to help people achieve their goals in allied healthcare.
I think that's, the nuts and bolts of it. For me, because I work in sort of the policy advancement of naturopathic medicine across the country, and we kind of have a different toolkit depending on the province that you're in. In Ontario, we actually have a really broad scope. We're the 3rd largest scope practitioners, regulated practitioners in Ontario. We wish we had a little bit more. There's other places where it's a bit better, but that's another story. But when I'm having that conversation, I always say to me, the difference between how a naturopathic doctor approaches a case and how other practitioners may approach a case is really the key for me. And that includes even functional medicine doctors and it's really that we are trained to look at the whole system. And so first of all, we spend a lot of time with our patients. Usually our initial visits are 60, 90 minutes, most NDs that I know. Yeah. And so you are able to integrate. And so a lot of what we do is not just, the preventative principles, but it's how do we implement them in your life? What is the context? Trying to get at why do you feel the way that you feel, not just sort of a quick answer. And so we might use different tools to do that, depending on the patient, depending on the doctor. But it's that viewpoint that we approach the patient with that I think is really what unites that, and why most of us became naturopathic doctors.
So it's interesting because we focus on women in leadership here, and as you probably are aware, it's a busy lifestyle.
It is
high stress, right? And so one of the things we talked about in our earlier episodes was this idea of self-care. And for me, the biggest item for self-care is just looking at my holistic self, right? Not just like go get a facial or a pedicure. yes, those are lovely things, but for my insides, I need to worry about my insides more than anything, right? And so tell me a little bit about how naturopathic, now you say like you work with the whole system, right? How does naturopathic medicine really differ then at looking at things that are happening on the inside for women?
Yeah. Since I started, and you can chime in. When I'm sitting down with a woman for the first time, as I have grown and evolved in my life, so is my patient base. I did a lot of fertility and sort of prenatal when I was younger, and now it's really, and the bulk of my patients are in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And so, I'll sit down, we'll really spend a lot of time going through what's happening physically, but also, yes, what they're eating, yes, what they're, drinking, what are they consuming, media and all those other things. But, what does their life look like? And then what are their priorities, right? Because what we're doing in our life right now reflects our priorities, right? And I find that a lot of women these days, and I have had this experience myself, where what we're doing isn't really aligned with what we want to do or what we think we should do. Yeah. And so a lot of it is that context, right? Is the basics of, outside of really complex chronic disease, most of us need the same kind of 6 or 7 things. Yeah. But how do we do that? What's stopping us? What are the things in the way? And then, and not everybody needs those things in the same order and to the same degree. And I think that's really where those individual plans come in. And
yeah, I do love that about practice, that we can take some time to identify the roadblocks, right? And break it down for everybody to be like, this is not me telling you what to do. This is you having a dialogue with us to say, this is what is attainable with my life right now, or these are the goals I want to focus on, and this is how much I can give financially. This is how much I can give, time-wise, right. Understanding all those constraints. Yeah. To actually make a plan that is feasible long-term.
Yeah, I know for me, like when I started, and I started way back when I was like 20, I think I was 21. And I was seeing a naturopathic doctor when I lived in Guelph as a 20-year-old. And it was awesome. And I just took everything and I usurped it up. And I was like, this is great, Now I reflect back and I'm like, there's no way I could have done all of that now, right? I have so many other things happening, right? So for me now, my approach is, what can I feasibly handle physically, mentally right now in the moment, and chunk it off basically, right? You develop habits, right? So how do I develop this habit of doing this one thing, right now? Okay, let's move on. Now I've developed that habit. Now what's the next step, right? So, and just being clear, I think with yourself, but also your naturopathic doctor, right? That this is what I can do and this is what I've worked on, right? Okay, so for women in leadership, like we said, it's a busy lifestyle. What are some of the pieces of advice you could give to women in leadership in terms of, how to best approach their own care? Right? Not knowing, all the, particulars and whatever. What are some of the things that you've noticed?
I would say the biggest thing for me is to prioritize sleep as a starting piece. So I think a lot of people get into this doom scrolling, right? We're tired and we're looking for kind of that dopamine release. So the idea of kind of disconnecting from technology, using those apps, I don't even know, you guys would maybe know better than me, and he definitely would, but those apps that limit the timing, right? Yes. Your phone goes off at 8:00, other than a phone call, let's say, but you can't get texts or go on social media from 8 to 8 or something like that. But disconnecting, and then also connecting in community. So finding people around, meal sharing, right? And saying every Monday's actually a light day for me. So me and 2 of my friends, I'm going to cook for your families. And then on Wednesday, you're going to cook for my families. And Thursday, that kind of thing. So I did it today, actually. Dropped off the chili on the way here.
Oh my God.
So, and Thursday I don't make dinner, which is great.
Bombers, so meal sharing.
Let's get on people that have the same family dynamics, I guess. Kids that like about the same stuff, around the same size family. And it's not attainable for everybody, but if it's in your life and you have that blessing, pour into that. So I would say those are kind of disconnect, connect with other people, and try to get to bed by 10:30.
Yeah, sleep I hear is it's huge. And I'm hearing it everywhere right now, right? And it's and it's funny because when I reflect back on the times when I felt the best in my life, I actually was getting 8 hours of solid sleep, right? Tracy, what do you think? What are some of those?
Yeah, definitely for sure. Sleep is the number one. And of course, as we get a little bit older, often, you find perimenopause, right? So like late 30s, early 40s, into your mid late 40s. It's interesting because that's when for a lot of us, if we have families where our kids might be getting a little bit older and we're through that sort of like really kind of sleep deprived stage, and then the hormones start, changing, and now we're back to like having
hormones.
Right, yeah, and we're having other sleep troubles. So sleep for sure. It is impossible to change anything else when you're chronically sleep deprived. We know that it has so many physical impacts. It has mental health impacts. So definitely sleep. And I think sometimes it's looking at like when we're overwhelmed. And we have so many things that we want to do. It's really just realizing, like, really being really clear on what are the priorities. And that's why working with a naturopathic doctor helps, because we're not going to just say you need to sleep more. We have a plan. Sure. And if that plan doesn't work, we're going to have another plan. Yeah. Right. And then is it, what's the next thing? Is it more movement for you? Really. And again, that's really individual. For some people it might be movement. For some people it might be some dietary changes. Sometimes supplements kind of can bridge the gap where you can't, there's certain, I just don't have time for this. And then figuring out where you are actually spending your time. So the apps is a huge one. The amount of time that people spend on their phones is crazy, but also you just have to recognize the season that you're in. I was saying this before, I have 2 teenagers and a toddler. So there's just certain things that I would love to do that I know right now it's more stressful to try and do them than it is to let go of them. So I have my own naturopathic doctor. I've identified like my 3 or 4 key. These are the key metrics that keep me functioning. Yeah. Or is there one there's like, you're not paying attention to this one, and this one is actually a really big key for you. So for me, it was movement that I was just really not prioritizing, and I had to be creative and figure out ways, and I had to give up some other things I was doing in order to get that piece in. But you're not doing it alone, right? And you're not guessing. And I think that's another big thing that a lot of women in leadership positions will do is they're smart. Right? We see the things that are out there, but actually knowing what to focus on for you individually and then how to execute it is where naturopathic doctors really come in.
And that's actually, there's a key thing there you're talking about too, perimenopause, because it's a hot topic right now. And I think it's because a lot of women are in that stage. And also blowing open the doors of this myth, right? Like the perimenopause is just, it's just, your body's natural way. Yes. However, there are many things that we suffer with, right, as women. So tell me a little bit about that, because we're going to actually have a guest on in a couple of weeks to talk about the movement aspects to being, taking care of ourselves, right, and really looking at perimenopause. What are the changes that are going on for women there that are going to affect our mental capacity?
I mean, I talk about this often, so I'm happy to dive in. But the biggest thing that you'll notice, so the average age of perimenopause is 47. That's kind of typical, but we can start to see changes as early as 42, even into your early 30 or your late 30s. There's premature ovarian insufficiency too at 32 sometimes, right? And so some women come in for fertility, and you have to give that really devastating news of like your follicle stimulating hormone for your brain talking to your ovaries is already sky high. So it happens, but on average, 45, 47 is where I start to see most women coming in. Yeah. And it starts off with, I can't sleep. So I'm up like 4 times a night, or I'm up for 15 plus minutes and I can't fall back asleep. Yeah. And like, I never used to have issues with sleep is how they often say it. And then there's the anxiety piece. And so obviously that goes in with the sleep as well. What came first, chicken or the egg? Some people will have hot flashes already starting, and their brain chemicals, like that FSH I talked about, will look fine, but it's like that cortisol stress component that's now causing kind of more hot flashes. So I don't know if I'm circling here, but I think the anxiety and the sleep and
so you're not going crazy.
Brain fog.
Brain fog is real. Yeah. And it's often like, the sleep. I often hear from women, I'm not sleeping well. I'm not, I just couldn't sleep. I got up at 3 o'clock. The 3 o'clock time period is like,
3 to 4 a.m.
It's like the hot, time period for women. We should just all connect at that time.
Support each other that way.
Support each other. What do you think, Tracy?
Yeah. I think on top of that, like I always describe it as, when we're in puberty, it takes, sometimes up to 2 years for the chemicals in our brain and our ovaries to sync up and start talking. And you basically have that happening again, right? Yeah. So you sort of hit that. And so you'll get some days, some months you'll feel better than others.
Yeah.
We know that the changes and drops in estrogen in particular have lots of impacts, right? So long term, it can have impacts on bone health, on cardiovascular health, on mental and cognition, and so and so yes, it is a normal, natural part of we will go through it, but there's we're also dealing with differences, right? And that we never had in 200, 300, 400 years ago, right? So the 3 a.m. thing is always interesting to me because, if I'm sitting with somebody in front of me and we've had, a conversation around bioidentical hormones and other things, and we're dealing with those aspects of it, we're really hitting sleep. And then we're looking at like, what's your blood sugar control like?
Yeah.
Because that changes when your estrogen drops. Our ability to, the way we used to process carbohydrates, as an example, in our 30s is not the same. And so these things change. And so sometimes and sometimes we have to make some adjustments and add in some things. And those can, so I'll do blood sugar. Look at that is a big one when people are waking up, because that can also cause that extra cortisol. Yeah. So.
Wow. Okay. So perimenopause. We won't get, that's a whole episode on its own, I feel like. But yeah, so thinking about the high stress lifestyle for women who are into leadership or who are just starting their kind of path into leadership, what are your pieces of advice there in terms of how to mitigate some of that stress? I know you said sleep, but sometimes sleep is not always the most feasible, right?
I mean, you can't help everyone, but vastly, I think we're quite good with sleep. I'm usually quite confident that I can get people sleeping. There's the odd person.
That's good.
Yeah. There's the odd person who's like, oh, I've been on like benzodiazepines for 25 years, right? And maybe there's somewhere you're like, good medicine might be the pharmaceuticals for you, right?
Yeah.
But I would think like the majority, right? You can help them with whether or not it's helping out with exercise or helping with your protein and your fiber to make sure your blood sugar is stable, or it's introducing supplements. I find I often for sleep do introduce supplements quite readily. And yes, there's magnesium and kind of the basic ones that are really quite well tolerated. And then there's some other ones too that help specifically, is it with the cortisol piece?
Yeah.
But I would rather someone do that for 6 to 8 weeks that's in the research for whatever it was, for example, and then try to take that away and see, like, are you still maintaining? But often we need something to do that shift, unless you have the individual that's like, yep, my children are in bed by 7 and I'm happy to go exercise for 2 hours and I can journal and I can do the bath. But they're far and few between.
I don't know that person.
No.
I don't know that person.
No. Theoretical.
No. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, right? Our nervous systems as women in leadership are often, like I was kind of joking around, that's like, our nervous systems don't know the difference between, our kids being, home and having something going on, or, traffic or stress at work and a bear chasing us, right?
Yeah.
So we're always in this kind of state of overwhelm. And so I often will find as well that there's there's some orthomoleculars and some herbs, depending on the person, that can really help just try to help them shift the gear, right? So into a more relaxed state so they can sleep. And then addressing, for me, the big ones are blood sugar control, and then, gradually increasing movement as you can.
Yeah.
We find the time for things that are important to us. So a lot of time there's just so much on the go.
Yeah.
You have to figure out how to reframe, I think, right?
I think that's been the key for a lot of the people I've talked to that have done this successfully, is that you have to figure out what fits first, right? And start there and then move in a way that fits your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right? But I think sleep is probably, for me, the most important. It's like there's a way, and there's remedies out there to help with that. I think sleep was the big one. We should do a whole episode on sleep.
There's one statement, because I love talking about perimenopause and menopause, to lead into it. There's one statement that they've actually done research on that is most indicative of whether or not you should probably look into hormonal. And it's, I don't feel like myself anymore.
Yeah.
So that statement carries a lot of weight to me. As soon as a woman says that, I'm like, okay, we're going to see where we're at.
Yeah.
But so I think that often low progesterone is what it comes to in perimenopause, and that really interferes with sleep.
So it's interesting because that was the first thing that came out of my mouth, I think, when I met was, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable in myself. I don't feel myself anymore. This is not who I am. Right. And I think it's a big identifier for women, right? I love that. Okay. So take that home. If you don't feel yourself, it's not you.
Look for you. Find yourself again.
Find yourself again. Okay. Well, what's one piece of advice? We're going to wrap up, but what's one piece of advice that you would want to give people, particularly as it relates to, finding a naturopathic doctor in their area, if they're even interested? What's the best way to kind of get started?
Sure. I think it's word of mouth more than anything, right? Like ask other practitioners. So ask your psychotherapist, ask your physio, your chiro, whoever it might be. Ask friends, family, people that you trust. There's always Google, right? We do everything that way too. And you can read reviews and go on RateMD. They'll have naturopaths up there too, and you can see testimonials a little bit, but we're not really supposed to share them. So you won't find a lot of it on naturopaths' websites. So it's really word of mouth. And I think there's definitely a handful of us in North Bay. So if it's just North Bay specific, it's finding who you want to connect with first, and then most will offer a free 15-minute consult as like a meet and greet virtually. So then you can find who you jive with.
Yeah. I think that's really key. You need to find somebody you jive with, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think, it's worth, if you're interested. I mean, really, if you don't feel like yourself and you've tried a few things and you're struggling, or that's when I think you should look for a naturopathic doctor. I think everybody should have one, but I agree. Particularly in those, and it's not a like, you've tried everything conventional medicine, nothing works. We'll get those patients sometimes, but this is really it's really a collaborative and integrative space.
Yes.
We work with nurse practitioners and medical doctors all the time.
Yeah.
And really working on integrating those tools. So, I encourage people to check out, I think the best search engine right now is probably the Canadian Association of Naturopathic Doctors.
Yeah.
Has a good one. The Ontario Association does as well. And that'll sort of kind of capture a large portion of where they're regulated, they got the education, and check out their websites. And a lot of them have a social media presence now where you can sort of, feel it out. They're all going to spend, a good portion of time in the initial visit getting to know you. So, spend the initial time and really, figure out what, because again, it's such an individualized sort of practice, right? People have there's different toolkits, there's different ways of looking at different cases. People have different areas where they focus more on. And so, putting in a little bit of extra time to do that really goes a long way in the end, to finding a practitioner that you're going to jive with, and that you're going to commit to doing the plan as much as they're going to commit to working with you on that.
Well, thank you for coming on. This has been awesome. Good conversation. A way to kind of start the conversation, I think. Thanks so much, F-Bombers, and we'll see you soon.